Hi there, it's Catherine, your lawyer friend and guide, and this is the #1 podcast for legal careers in Japan. Thanks for stopping by the Lawyer on Air podcast. Today I'm joined by Aida Wang, who is a legal recruiter at Just Legal, specialising in placements for Japanese Bengoshi. Aida brings a really distinctive lens to legal recruitment. In this episode, we talk about some very practical and, frankly, not discussed often enough aspects of building a long, resilient legal career in Japan. One of those is deal sheets. This is something a very early Lawyer on Air guest once told me to do, and it stuck. I built my deal sheet over many years, both in-house and private practice, and it continues to be the gift that keeps on giving when my potential clients want detail on what I've actually done in the past. In the moment, we remember our work, but over time, the details fade. So, creating cadence for updating your deal sheet and tracking your broader BD and firm contributions is a serious investment in the arc of your career. We also talk about recruiters and why they're not just people you call on when you want jobs. Building real long-term relationships with recruiters, sharing your updates and insights with them, and staying in touch over time evens up the ledger. So when you need help, that relationship really matters. This is a practical, thoughtful conversation with Aida Wang, especially for Bengoshi thinking about the long game. Let's get into it. Well, welcome to the show, Aida Wang.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
It's lovely to have you here finally. We are going to start with the usual warm-up question. Imagine that we are meeting up in person. Where are we and what are you ordering to drink from the menu?
I'm actually a very big tea person. I don't drink coffee, and I really love the brand Afternoon Tea. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I do know it. It's one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, I really love all their products, the restaurants, the cafes. I'm probably their biggest target audience because I love the products that they sell, and I love the menus that they, provide every season. Right now it's strawberry season, so my go-to drink would probably be cream tea.
Oh,
And yeah, I really like tea and milk. And I really like their classic cream tea set where you have scones and jam and clotted cream. So that's my go-to.
right. I've got it. Yeah, I haven't been to afternoon tea to have something to eat for a long time. They had a store in one of the Marunouchi buildings
Yeah,
and they closed
unfortunately,
it.
they closed it. I was so sad because the scenery there was really nice. You could see a little bit
Scenery's
of the
great.
Imperial Palace at night as well.
Yeah, and I loved popping in there when I had a meeting in that area and I thought, oh, I'll go to afternoon tea. And they closed it. So I'm really sad about that. Oh,
Yeah.
but look, we've got another thing in common. Well, I know that people are listening and going, well, Ida's not a lawyer. What's she doing here? But I've invited you on at the beginning of 2026 because
Yep.
you're a special guest, and I'd love you to update us on some trends and insights in the legal recruitment industry in Japan. And so let's get to know you a little bit first before we walk through your recruitment insights. First up, I notice you often talk about your career as something that bridges gaps because you started your career as a translator and interpreter. And before we clicked the record button today, we were talking a little bit about that. But
Yes.
you literally now bridge languages. So, how did that evolve into what you are doing now with Just Legal?
Well, thank you very much, Catherine, first of all, for inviting me to talk a little bit about my journey here and also explaining a little bit of what I do at Just Legal. So, before I became a legal recruiter, which is, as you mentioned, fairly recently, I have been a professionally trained translator and interpreter between English and Mandarin Chinese. So essentially, Japan is not my market, but the similarities I see is that in legal recruitment, as well as in interpreting and translation, I'm basically the person bridging the communication between two sides. And the training that I received as an interpreter really helps me kind of be a better listener, understand what each side is really getting to, not just what they're saying, but what they're actually communicating. It's a lot of like cultural context, a lot of things that are not being said, the body language, everything. And there's a lot of nuance in communication. So when a candidate comes to us saying that they want this, and you kind of help them really figure out whether that is for them. And then you bring their story to clients and vice versa. If a client tells me this is what they need, first thing we ask is, do you really need that? And we help with that communication, informing their stories to bring to good candidates in the market. So, in my experience as a legal recruiter, I feel like I'm bridging the communication between two sides.
Oh, I just love that explanation. It's so true. And I think, even if it's English to Mandarin or another language, Japan has certainly become your market. I loved how you pointed out about, the body language part of things or the nuances, because that's such an important part of existing and really thriving and surviving in Japan. Because
Yes.
those mannerisms, your tone of voice, your body language, it gives us away. It
Yes.
gives us away in
Especially,
a
yeah.
negative way, but also in a very positive way. You may say something,
Yeah.
but your whole body language is saying something else. You're
Mm.
maybe gunning for some sort of role, and then actually your true passion is being revealed through a body language or voice or mannerisms sort of
Yes.
aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, and Japanese is actually a very high context language. So a lot of things are not said. It's more like you need to understand the context of what's being said or the sequence of what things are being said. So a lot of it is actually up for interpretation, even when it is being said. And I feel like the training that I've had gives me a lot of insight into what to pick up in these conversations.
Yeah, you've really shown that common thread between interpreting and the legal recruitment world that you're working in now. But you have lived in various countries, I think Taiwan, Bahamas, US, UK. I think in the US it was a New York base that you had, and now you're in
Yes.
Japan. How has all of that global lens shaped the way that you understand lawyers and law firms here in Japan?
Well, I've been very privileged to be able to live in different countries. I'm originally from Taiwan. Mandarin is actually my mother tongue, but English is the first systematic language that I learned in school. So having that cultural context and basically being very bilingual in my head, it helps me understand that there's always two sides to a story, and it depends on how you look at things. So in a given situation where I ask lawyers, what do you want in your next step? They always say it depends, as all lawyers say.
Japan, they love it, don't they? That it depends.
It depends. And, I need to help them decipher what does it depend on
Yeah.
and how would this play out if you took this route. While I was growing up, having a lot of exposure to different kinds of people really helped me learn how to speak to different people. And I believe even as lawyers, the common perception, I would say, for lawyers is that most lawyers, or especially Bengoshi lawyers, are very risk adverse. But when you get the chance to speak to them, you realize they're just people. Everyone has different personalities, things that they care about. And having that global experience, you kind of know how to speak to different people, even if they have different opinions than you. There's always some common ground that you can find.
Yeah, I mean, we call it an industry, recruitment industry, but as you said, it's all about people. And it's clear to me from what you're saying why you have recently become the top biller in the firm, correct?
Well, I'm very lucky. I would say I'm very lucky to have a really great platform and also Sempais who
Yes.
have given me a lot of their accumulative industry knowledge, like understanding how to connect the dots faster is really what they've provided me. And just standing on those shoulders, I get to work at a faster pace. I get to understand things in a deeper level and a lot less, mistakes that needs to be made really helped me, become a better biller in that sense. In the first quarter that I started billing, I did make a really, really big placement. And it was very interesting for my senpais to see that because after I joined Just Legal, we kind of each consultant specialized even more into their own areas. So I was given the task to specialize in private practice and focus on Bengoshi searches, while my colleagues would go deeper into in-house opportunities with various industries. So they're more industry focused. And after that switch, everyone has become even more specialized. And I feel like with that specialization, we get deeper knowledge of the industry that we work in. And, it really helps us build stronger relationships with our clients and candidates.
Yeah, well, I think it's wonderful you've given credit to your senpai, the people who've come before you. I think it's an equation, it's 1 + 1 = 2. It's them and you are
Yes.
making that number two. And so I still want to say congratulations for billing as well
Thank
as you
you.
have. Is there more than the things that you've mentioned so far that's helped you to make the transition into this ecosystem, shall
Yeah.
we say, rather than industry? I think it's more your community of people who are helping
Yeah.
people move from one legal role to another. Maybe there's some key things there that happened, as well as what you've mentioned already about your people that are before you, the senpais, and also your interpreting and translation background.
When I started out in recruitment, or actually, I started out in legal recruitment, and it's a very funny thing because most recruiters, you can ask most recruiters, how did you become a recruiter? And like 99% of people would say, we didn't have any other choice, or that's something that just happened. And my route to becoming a recruiter really was also by chance. And the seat that I was given was just given to me and say, "Oh, I think you're good for legal. So why don't you try the legal seat?" That was before I joined Just Legal, and it was very early on that I had to connect the dots by myself, understand what law firm lawyers do, what private practice is, what's the difference between in-house, but having that autonomy and freedom to kind of understand from not understanding anything really challenged me to be proactive and be curious about how I want to develop my career as a recruiter.
I see. So it's interesting that someone said you'd be good at it.
Yeah.
And I often hear this, you'd be good at this or good at that. Without any elaboration on that, what does good at mean? Did somebody tell you what it was? Was it that, indeed, that proactiveness or curious nature that you have that maybe stood out to somebody?
Hmm. I actually don't know why my previous boss said, "I think you're good for legal recruitment." Probably because he had a hand trying legal recruitment and he realized it was a fairly different market compared to different industries like finance or tech. And after I really started doing legal recruitment and comparing myself to other colleagues who are in different industries, I realized that the business model is fairly different, meaning it's a very candidate short market, and it takes a lot of time to build trust and relationships with lawyers who basically can get jobs on their own. And
Mm,
yeah, it's what kind of value you're trying to add to the conversation. Why should these people trust you? I think is the biggest differentiator in this industry. And really, I still don't know why my boss says, "Oh, I think you're good for legal." Probably because, as I said earlier, I quite comfortable speaking to different people. Even if, in Japan, sensei is a ちょっと偉い,
Yeah.
career for a lot of people. So people have this preconception that lawyers are very hard to speak to, very cold and etc. But as I said, people are people, so it's not too scary for me.
It's interesting. Maybe there's a chance when your paths cross again to say, hey, back then, I've always been wanting to ask you,
Yeah.
what was it? But is there something that happened, a moment in the recent past or at
Mm.
some point where you thought, yes, this is actually the right seat for me? Maybe it was that big placement that went really well, but that might have been something else that's more subtle or quieter when somebody changed their life because you helped them. Was there
Yeah.
some time when that happened for you?
Well, yes, actually, early on, I realized first I really like recruitment. As I said, it's very similar to translation and interpreting. It's building bridges, connecting people, and building relationships. Before I became a recruiter, I was a translator and interpreter for nearly a decade. So I was working from home before everyone was working from home. And I really missed that human connection where you had colleagues, you had people that you could integrate to society with. And I feel like being able to connect the dots and also helping people understand parts of the industry that they didn't know existed really provides added value for these people. And I really like being able to contribute to somebody and being helpful. So, yes, making a placement was a kind of a really happy achievement for
Mm.
myself, but being able to help people, that really made me realize, yes, this is really fun and this is really rewarding personally.
Oh, right. It's amazing. And so I think you've talked in the past about Bengoshi, how they struggle to build their own clients before they are made up to partner.
Yes.
So I'd love to talk a bit about that area. Can you elaborate on what that means from your perspective and what actually helps the lawyers then make that shift? I'm wondering if it's a lack of confidence and then it comes to them, or is this an active working on building their own clients?
Thank you very much for that question. Actually, it's very interesting to point out here that after I became more specialized in private practice, I realized that there's a lot of similarities between recruitment and private practice lawyers and essentially the business model. Both recruiters and private practice lawyers are what we call fee earners. And essentially, you need to be able to advise your clients on strategies and of course, lawyers, you need technical excellence,
Mm.
things like that. So the business model is quite similar, but what I see that recruiters also struggle with and senior associate or junior partners in law firms, they would struggle with is building their own client base and developing their own clients. And the reason this is difficult for some lawyers is essentially in the early stages of their career, they're being told by their sempais or the managers that they should focus on honing their skills, their legal skills, and really understanding the law. And later on, they realize, okay, I've got that down, but what's next? And they see people that are successful in their company, and it's the reason why they're being categorized as successful would be because they have their own clients. They have
Mm.
a steady revenue coming into the firm based on those relationships that they've built throughout the years. And then they kind of want to be like that, but they haven't been able to receive the training or instructions on how to do that. And when your title changes to a senior associate, sometimes they're like, okay, now what? How do I go about
How to
this?
do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how do I do that?
Yeah.
And it's very similar in recruitment as well. As a junior person in a recruitment industry, perhaps you start off as a researcher, an associate as well. You're supporting your senpais on different searches, and later on, you're also given that responsibility to develop clients, but you don't really know how. So that's where we as recruiters, we can, help add a little bit of value. Other than recruitment, our biggest goal is to connect people.
Mm.
And we're more than happy to, explain to you like who's a legal counsel at this firm or that firm, and perhaps help you connect the dots and connecting with different kinds of people. And lawyers can also achieve that by having casual conversations with
Mm.
different firms, different companies, not perhaps for the sake of moving to that company, but really expanding the network and your knowledge of different industries.
Yeah, casual conversations are, it would feel like it wouldn't be casual, perhaps. I mean, how do you have a casual conversation compared to showing that you're actually really, really interested in something? How do you set that up so that people feel comfortable going and doing that? Because some may feel even a casual conversation could be betrayal or that I'm looking like I'm going to depart and it might get out in the market. So tell me a bit more about that because that's an interesting aspect.
Yes, essentially, it's our job as a recruiter to manage expectations in the process. And as I work with Japanese lawyers, Bengoshis, I would say 90% of the Bengoshi population in Tokyo are not actively looking to change jobs. And it's often where I bring a interesting opportunity to them. And some of them poke their heads out and want to understand what's happening, but it doesn't mean that they're looking to change jobs anyway. So what they want is actually market information. What kind of industries are active? What kind of companies are looking to hire? Perhaps it's just reference for their future self. It could be that they're in a specific industry like manufacturing or energy, and they want to know who are the players in this market. So it's our job as recruiters to manage the expectations of our clients, saying that, okay, this person might not be an active, candidate right now, but in the future they might be. It's also beneficial for the clients to understand what kind of lawyers are out there because most often clients don't know. They just give us a big wish list. I want this, I want that. And then we present some candidates to them and they're very not happy saying that,
Mm.
but they don't have this, they don't have that. But then we can't get everything we want in life. Same for our clients, same for our candidates, and you need to find some common ground. But unless you have a chance to speak to the people in the market, you really wouldn't know what's out there. Everything is very theoretical, right?
Mm. It's very interesting. I see you as, looking through your recruiter's lens, it's very much about perception and
Yes.
being perceptive. And you're often seeing things that lawyers don't often see. And I think even that analogy that recruitment is like private practice lawyering, that I don't think I've heard anyone say. And I expect that you maybe give them that analogy when you're working with them. Look, I'm in the same boat. I know what it's like because recruitment's very similar with the fee earners, etc. And you explain that. But are there any other misconceptions that perhaps lawyers have about how they're being perceived in the market? And maybe even from your conversations with Bengoshi, what do you see as you talked about expectations before, but some of
Yeah.
the unspoken expectations, things that aren't, and we haven't even talked about a JD yet, things
Mm.
that aren't written down, but everyone tends to feel.
Right. So, in terms of misconceptions of lawyers, especially Japanese Bengoshis in the market, I would say that the biggest misconception is that people are very risk adverse. I say that because, I think essentially lawyers need to be risk averse. You need to be able to identify the risks. Well, one of my senpais explained to me early on in my career that a good compliance officer and a good lawyer would be able to tell you where the gray lines are and how to navigate those risks instead of just completely avoiding those risks. And I think for a lot of lawyers, they're not really risk adverse. They're just very careful on what they're planning to do. And unless there really is a great upside to something, they probably won't take that jump to change their current situation, is what I feel in the market. And also, a lot of Japanese Bengoshis, instead of being risk adverse, I would say that often they're just following what their senpais are doing. And for example, they see their senpais going on LLM in the next few years, and they think, okay, that's the path that I need to follow. But in reality, I would say perhaps they're misinformed or they're not given a lot of different role models or different examples of various careers. So our value as recruiters is, highlighting there are different paths to a successful career.
Absolutely. And I think if there's one thing to do in 2026 is let's ditch the labeling of
Yeah.
lawyers as, risk adverse. This is just such a harmful label, I believe. And I loved the
Yeah.
word careful that you used because careful is what they are. They're careful before they jump.
Yeah.
They'll make sure they've got a backpack on or a parachute before they jump. They want to jump, but
Yeah.
of course they're doing the necessary things that they need to do before they do that. So I agree with you. The information may not all be there. The role model who didn't take the LLM is not there. So let's just ditch risk
Yeah.
adverse. Anyone
Yes.
listening, please don't use it and go for other words that describe the reality of the situation.
You mentioned like what kind of unspoken
Yes.
expectations are placed on lawyers in private practice. I would say most often I don't receive JDs from law firms. They just
Is
tell
that
me,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I've basically probably only received one JD in the past 3 years that I've been recruiting in private practice. So essentially, when clients brief me on what they need, they just give me a checklist of
Laundry
the
list.
a laundry list, yes, wish list,
Wish list, yes.
wishful thinking wish
Yeah.
list that this is what they want, this is what they need. But often, what's not laid out is why. Why do you
Mm.
need this
Mm.
person? What value or what part is this person going to play in your team or in your firm? And we want to be able to help our clients formulate that story because a story really carries much more weight than a checklist. Having a story and being able to modify it depending on the candidate's situation really adds more value into the conversation that we can have with both clients and candidates. So, in terms of like the unspoken expectations, I would say that a lot of the times it's not just a checklist that the law firm is looking for. They're looking for someone that could contribute to their clients, contribute to the team, but how does that really translate into a story is what's not being said, and that's what we want to help people create.
How interesting. You're getting law firms to do storytelling.
They're not
So,
very good at it yet, I must say.
hey, lawyers in general aren't. It's a little bit, and I'm just doing a blanket label there, so I have to be careful of my
Yeah.
own what I'm saying and then doing something different. But tend to not be so brilliant at storytelling.
Mm.
But I think, finding that why and where they fit, which part of the play they are acting, the play being the law firm and what act they are doing, I
Yes.
think is really interesting. And helping clients formulate their story must be quite a fascinating role to have. Is there anything that comes out quite regularly? Maybe it's not only technical excellence or visibility or internal trust. Is there something that comes out quite often that you're now seeing in these unwritten job descriptions, but more the story that they want to tell and where that new person's going to fit into the part of the story?
Most often, what I hear in these stories is essentially why they're looking for these certain profiles. Either it would be industry focused or seniority focused, but part of the reason they're looking is one, there's not that many lawyers to begin with in the market. It's a very, as I said, very candidate short market.
Mm.
But what we've been seeing is that a lot of the mid to senior level associates tend to encounter life choices. And at different stages of their life, they might choose to go in house. And that's not a bad thing for law firms, essentially. They're not super bummed out if people choose to go in house. But the people that remain or the people that they want to attract at that level, what they're looking for in terms of skill set is good communication skills.
Mm.
And the reason why they want someone with good communication skills is because lawyers at that level, they are, I would say, similar to in a company, they're mid-level managers. They need to be able to manage upwards and also downwards, meaning they need to help train the more junior lawyers, but also be able to lead and be independent and also be able to communicate with all stakeholders, their clients, their partners, and etc. So really communication skills is a very key skill set to have.
Ah, interesting. Is communication skills something that can be learned? How do you show you've got communication skills if they're interviewing, talking with you about building their story?
I would say all communication starts with listening and being able to listen well, understand what that person is telling you without really interjecting your own personal opinions. And of course, finding a solution off the bat is the first step to good communication. And, being able to work with others and be a team player is another way to showcase or develop communication skills.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? The word communication sounds like you
Yeah.
are the one speaking.
Yes.
You are conveying your thought, which is
Yeah.
true. But
Which is true.
before you do that, you're saying the listening aspect is incredibly important. Very
Yes.
good.
It's
Right.
a two-way street.
Yeah,
You
sure
have
is.
to listen.
All right. Well, let's get into some of the things that I'm sure some people are really interested in hearing from you inside the Bengoshi market.
Sure.
Because I know that you and one of your colleagues have created quite a unique document that you regularly update, reporting out on hiring tracks, patterns, these stories that are being shared, momentum, representation. And I think this makes you really legal market observers, not simply what we might call legal recruiters. I think you're observing and
Thank you.
noticing and therefore putting that into the documents that you prepare. Without naming firms and figures, of course, what kinds of general patterns are you seeing emerge across this Bengoshi market, Japanese lawyer market?
Right. Thank you very much, Catherine. We do try to add more value to both our clients and candidates by giving these kind of reports that are very specific to private practice. And what trends that we've been noticing now is, I would say, gender diversity still has quite some room to grow. That's one thing.
Right.
And second one is in-house, as I mentioned a little
Hmm.
earlier, is now becoming a bigger competitor to private practice for legal talent. And there's various reasons related to that. But what we've also been seeing is technical excellence in a private practice lawyer is not enough. A lot
Hmm.
of the as I said earlier, communication skills and having a commercial mindset really is a big differentiator for law firm candidates. And we see a lot of mid to senior level Bengoshi lawyers choose different paths in terms of further education. Earlier, I said a lot of lawyers choose an LLM course because that's what their senpais have been doing all the time. But nowadays, I also see lawyers going on MBAs or MSCs or public health administrator kind of further
Mm,
education. So a lot of the times I feel a lot of these lawyers are thinking outside the box more than before and really thinking how they can add value to their clients by developing a different kind of commercial mindset and being aware of the challenges or the industry focused skill sets that their clients need.
interesting. Wow. I love hearing that there's that difference of LLM, and that's still a fabulous track, but taking other different aspects from different areas such as MBA, that's absolutely fantastic. And MBA is
Yes,
a big investment, isn't it,
it
in
is.
time
It is.
and money. But can I go back a little bit to that
Sure.
diversity aspect, the gender diversity? Just touch on that a little bit more.
Yes.
What are the firms just generally getting better at doing? And where are you still seeing some gaps that need to be worked out on? Because you did mention that.
Well, in the report that we provide to our private practice clients, we essentially take a lot of time, dissecting the diversity aspects of our law firm clients, how many people make partner, etc. What is the gender ratio? But those are very basic information. But what we use that in describing to our clients is how can they do better and what kind of internal policies can they develop to attract or retain these good lawyers. And what we see is that more and more, especially after COVID, a lot of workplace policies have changed. One is working from home. Remote work is quite normal now for private practice lawyers. You don't have to be in the office most often. And second, maternity leave or paternity leave is becoming a very important issue for a lot of lawyers. And a lot of law firms are trying to be fair
Mm.
to both the moms and dads that need to take care of their kids. So I speak to a lot of male Bengoshis, and I feel they're pulling their weight in raising their family, and their law firms are backing them up in terms of providing them that space and time to grow as, not just as a lawyer, but as a father. So I think those are really good and positive trends that I see.
We're at the start of 2026 recording this episode, and I think it's really good to look ahead and see what you're thinking about might be coming up during this year. And in particular, let me go into an AI question because it wouldn't be complete without bringing that in. I've heard a lot and read a lot about AI being used in the preparation of resumes, CVs. So the first part of my question is, what are you seeing coming across your desk? Is it really obvious when something's been AI driven? Would you recommend lawyers tend to use it and also use their own insights rather than just relying on AI? And also, the second bit would be perhaps how you, in your particular role, how you're using it in CV review and otherwise.
Yes, the short answer is yes, AI is being used in recruitment. In my own area where I've serviced private practice clients and work with Bengoshis, it's not being used that much, I would say. I see a lot of trends in my in-house colleague side where a lot of the talent acquisition TAs of companies would screen CVs based on these keywords that AI can help generate in
Mm.
the CV. But in private practice, it's still a very high touch, very personalized kind of market. That said, I still encourage candidates to use AI to polish things off and really help themselves articulate what kind of message they want to give to the person reading your CV. Now, personally, in Just Legal, we do also utilize AI to format CVs, but it's the content that actually matters in your CV. It's not
Mm.
whether, you have those buzzwords, your keywords that can pop up in the system for companies or law firms, but the content is the key. And what we encourage our candidates to do for their CVs is to give solid examples, and you can, try to not, reveal everything about a deal, but explain your key responsibilities. How does that contribute to your client in terms of the deal size, the numbers, everything, that kind of details do help the client to understand to what extent your experience goes to. And also, we recommend that people give a short 1 or 2 sentence from the heart of why you think this firm is interesting to you and why you think this is a good chance for you to contribute to a particular firm. And having that, 1 or 2 sentences is really what I said earlier about having a good story, because it's important for law firms to be able to tell a story, but it's also important for candidates to tell a good story. And the first thing that law firms often see is on paper your CV, and they want to know why, with these all these good credentials, that great experience, why are you interested in them? And that will give them a better sense of a fit for their firm, but also it will make the conversation more efficient.
Mm. Trying to vocalize that, why us?
Yes.
And be able to say, well, my friends are working there, or I heard about it as a really great firm, or the reputation is wonderful, or you're top four, or you're medium sized. But how to actually make that, as you say, from the heart.
Yes.
What is it about that? Who are the partners in our firm that you've read about or heard about on a podcast, for example, that you really want to work with, and why is that? I mean, something like that must be more impactful than simply just going to the usual sort of descriptions of why you want to work somewhere. So I think that's wonderful. So that short 1 to 2 sentences goes into the CV, and that bit you said before about giving examples of your key responsibility, how it contributes, the impact, are they
Yeah.
also within the CV?
Yes. So we recommend our private practice candidates to create what we call a deal sheet.
Right.
And
Yes.
I recommend all junior Bengoshis to write down your deals and make a record of your
Yes.
deals.
Yeah.
It's going to be very difficult after just 2, 3 years to really recall what you did at the beginning. And having that deal sheet, it doesn't have to be super detailed, but having, some recollection of what you did in the past also helps you kind of plan for the future. It gives you a chance to reflect on what parts of that journey did you enjoy, which parts do you want to develop more. And, you can pull up examples easily if you have a deal sheet. You don't have to share the whole thing to a recruiter or a law firm, but from that deal sheet, you can pick the relevant experiences and it'll make your life much easier down the road.
It's so true. And you can't even imagine how many years that lasts. There are still times when I refer to it or bring out a deal sheet. Now, right, in my own practice of, fractional general counsel, I do still bring it out for certain companies or clients who want to know about the particular work I did in a particular area. And it's such a magical document to
Yes.
have. And I think it's something like a shokumuke rekisho or something,
Yes.
a work record, deal sheet, work record, whatever you might want to call it. But it's invaluable. And I love that you've pointed this out because you will find that you cannot remember. In the moment, yes, you remember the deals you've done this year or last year, maybe. But
Yes.
as time goes on, you forget. And having them written down and recorded is gold.
Yes, it is gold, and it really helps jog your memory.
Sure
Um,
does.
Especially, I see a lot of Bengoshis who are either on LLM or they're on secondment, perhaps, and they probably don't have access to the original database where,
Right. Yeah.
so having a personal record of it doesn't have to be sensitive information, but it's just a simple record of what kind of matters were you responsible for, what kind of contracts did you handle. That kind of information really helps jog your memory. So it helps you articulate later on, like, what did you do here? What did
Yeah.
you do there?
Exactly. And it can be just an Excel sheet if you want to go really back into analog, or it could be Word document. You just put different columns in and you just do client that can obviously not be told later, deal matter that you did, value, impact, and just jot even little words and one liners in there that will then something you can go back to and then create that deal sheet. Just having that recorded is just invaluable.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, we are here at the beginning of the 2026 year. If you zoomed out from that, are there any things, any shifts that you might expect to see or that you are observing in the legal market?
Well, yes, and thanks for asking. I find it very, very interesting that at the end of 2025, what we've noticed in private practice in Tokyo, it's been quite dramatic, actually.
Tell us more.
I've to the extent that I can say, we've noticed some firms closing down, we've noticed name partners moving, we've noticed new firms and practices popping up. So it's a lot of movement under the surface. And I would say that in 2026, I would predict there's more movements and more movers and shakers coming in, but I guess we'll have to
Mm,
wait and see.
yeah. Any particular practice areas you see gaining some momentum?
Yeah. Energy has
Mm,
become a very big area of focus. It's been quite popular, I would say, in the past few years, but since end of last year, I've noticed quite a number of law firms building this renewable energy practice area. Part of it, I would say, relates to the real estate practices where you have data centers that are very big in Japan, especially with the AI boom. So that's one area that I think will continue to evolve. And corporate M&A has always been an area where you have a lot of people, but then there's still a lot of needs. So that's still going to keep going strong.
mm, great. For Bengoshi and private practice, what will matter maybe more in this year than it perhaps did 1 or 2 years ago?
I would say cross-border work is still going to be very strong. And what will matter even more in the future would be for Bengoshi's language skills.
Mm,
So, in essence, Japan as a whole is not going to continue to expand. It's a shrinking market with a aging population and etc. But if you zoom out to that extent, you'll see that it's very critical for lawyers and Japanese lawyers to not just focus on the domestic market, but also look abroad and be aware of global trends, be aware of what your Japanese clients need. And I see a lot of law firm partners telling us that the Japanese clients are doing very well and they're helping them on a lot of outbound deals. And I see that the skill set that is needed is not just technical excellence. Like for Japanese lawyers, perhaps they think that as a Japanese lawyer, my value is advising on Japanese law. But having a commercial mindset and understanding what your client needs in terms of outbound deals is equally important to service these clients. And that also ties back to what we said earlier about business development, helping your clients not just on Japanese or Japan law matters creates more added value for them.
I think it's interesting because I've in the past heard that a commercial mindset is important, but to hear it as equally important has shown how much more valued that is these days. I suppose too, if there's one listener here who's thinking, I'm listening to Ida, I really love what she's saying. What is one thing you think that they could do to help their legal career? Maybe not exactly future proof it, but if possible, what would you suggest that they should focus on?
I would say it all goes back to being open-minded, and you don't have to follow what your senpais have done in the past, and the partners might not have all the answers either. But being able to communicate and finding what you enjoy in your legal career also is very important.
Mm.
So first, find what you like to do in legal, then being open minded on the different career paths to what can be achieved is the second thing I would say.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you a few things that will maybe take you into a mentor kind of hat on. So, when should a lawyer really start to talk to a recruiter? And I think also what makes it a really good place to be where you have a long term relationship with a recruiter. And in my past, if I just say, trying to keep in touch, not only when I'm looking or thinking about looking or curious,
Yes.
but to also stay in touch over a certain period of time because it's a relationship. For me, that's number one.
Yes.
But I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Thank you very much, Catherine. That's exactly what I would recommend to our candidates or Bengoshi lawyers and or lawyers in general in the Tokyo market is to speak to a recruiter early in your career. As I said earlier, it's keeping an open mind that there are various paths that you can take to a successful career in legal. And the earlier the better, I would say, to keep in touch with a recruiter that you feel you can trust, someone who is knowledgeable. And you can get a sense of that once you speak to this person, whether they're knowledgeable about the industry that they represent or whether they are proactive in providing information to you. Even if you're not looking to change jobs immediately, these are all valuable market insights that you can gain by speaking to a recruiter. And actually, I would recommend that since the private practice market is quite small compared to in-house market where you have various industries. So I'd recommend speaking to just one or two recruiters regarding private practice opportunities, but have a wider net in terms of speaking to different recruiters that are in touch with different industries in-house.
Ah, good point. Yes, you don't want to be spreading it too wide when there's
Yes.
only a few, but go wider when you need more industry information or it's an in house placement you're interested in.
Yes.
Great. Wow. Amazing. So, when you're connecting with someone, if they're keeping in touch with you in this way, they're speaking early in their career with you, what makes you think, I really want to advocate for this person? I really want to try and make a difference in their life by finding them their new next role. What is it that makes you sort of click about them?
I would say trust goes both ways. So if that person comes to me and they're trusting me to deliver information to them, at the same time, I know that they're not working with like 10 other recruiters to
Yeah.
gather this information. I'm much, much more willing to provide that information to this person.
Mm.
And, as I said, trust goes both ways. And, inevitably it's a small market and there's very limited clients in private practice. So if the candidate knows what they want and what kind of information they want, and they trust me to provide that information, I'm much more willing to work with them and advocate for them and also help them formulate their stories to
Yes.
our
Yes.
clients. And I find that my job there, once they know what they want, is helping them find a cultural fit and personality fit for their next home.
Next home. I like that. So then one last question in this section, I think, would be if you were a Bengoshi starting out in your career, there's two parts to this. What you would probably do differently from what you've seen, maybe compared to the first 4 or 5 years, right? And the
Yeah.
second part of that is what's something, a habit that you'll see lawyers continuing to do. So one is what they would do differently,
Yeah.
and what other part would be the continuing small habit for a satisfying career, probably a long and satisfying career.
Yeah. I would actually recommend young lawyers to get in touch with a recruiter from day one or
Mm,
have access to a recruiter who you've observed and you kind of know that, oh, they're kind of connected with these kind of people. And knowing that you have that resource to go to is very important. Previously, one of my senpais, my managers, they actually went to Todai, Tokyo University of Tokyo,
mm,
and spoke to law school students and explained to them how private practice works, what's the dynamics, what kind of law firms are out there. And after I speak to many, many junior associates, I realized they don't know the law firm names of, other than the big four Japanese firms or the big five or six. They're very, I would say, ignorant to what's out there, even in
mm.
Tokyo, like who are the main international firms in Tokyo or in the APEC region. And being more aware of these things is very beneficial for you as a legal counsel in Japan because you'll come across these people across the table, working with them in deals. So being aware of who the players are in the market is quite important.
Absolutely. And it's interesting is only recently I found out there's a law firm in town that has virtually 100% work from home. And that surprised me because I didn't know that kind of firm was still operating or that the firm was approaching work in that way post COVID. Because there's
Yes.
this whole dramatic get back to work or have 20% away from work or 1 day a week you can work away. But this
Yeah.
was a firm I heard that's their angle
Yeah.
for gaining perhaps people who are like you've just mentioned, who are not going out there and who are not aware of the market, but there are players who are aware and are coming to work for them. So I thought that was an interesting differentiator that they are leveraging.
If I may add, I would also recommend young Bengoshi starting their career today to try to understand what practices excites them and try to identify the mentors in their firm that can guide and support you and people that you can learn from in this area.
Why is that important?
I think it ties back to having a role model and understanding, people have done this in the past. It kind of takes the fear away from
Mm,
doing things and also being a successful lawyer in private practice for a long time, you develop your own kind of ways of doing things. And it's always beneficial for people to learn from each other.
mm,
So as a junior person, of course, you can learn from your senpais, but you can also learn from your peers. And having that soundboard system, identifying the right people, really can benefit your career in the long run. And when you become a more experienced lawyer, working with people that are younger than you that perhaps can give you different ideas, that's also very important. So you're kind of giving back as a
Mm,
mentor once you
yeah,
become more senior. I think it's a mentorship goes two ways. So finding that person and, bouncing ideas off of them is very beneficial for one's career.
for sure. And should people say, I see you as a role model? Should they declare that? I sometimes think it really, really helps to say to somebody, I've noticed you do X, Y, Z, and I just see you as a role model for me and what I want to do. And how would you say that? Or would you say it so directly? What do you think?
I would say it very directly. I'm not sure in Japanese whether that's good or not, but personally I think, validating other people's achievements and showing that this is an area that you care about, unless you voice it, people won't know, right?
Yeah.
And unless you explain to people what do you want to achieve in your career, they wouldn't know. That ties into career progression. If the partners or if the management sees that this is what you want to achieve and you voice it, they're more than happy to support you. And, unless you tell them, they wouldn't know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Well, for somebody who's sitting here listening and feels a little stuck right now, maybe they're a little unsure, what would you encourage them to do, even just this month or this coming month? If we're, whenever they're listening to this, it's just before a new month or a new quarter. What's something you think they could focus on?
Well, other than giving me a call or email or
There we
message,
go.
yeah, which I do encourage people to do, but I would say if you're feeling stuck now, you should take a step back to see how far you've come so far. We often don't give ourselves enough credit for the achievements that we've accomplished. And, looking back can provide some clarity in what you want to do going forward. So, personally, like, I'm a very detail oriented planner type of person. And when things are incredibly overwhelming to me, I still want to be productive. And
Mm.
it's just really hard to switch off. So I kind of do absolutely like nothing related to work, but I still try to do something. And I like embroidery. I like go clean my kitchen or I work on organizing my son's bookshelf. But I realize that that's not really helping. And right now I'm really trying to take a step back and leave things and rest properly, regather my thoughts, then become more productive after I come back.
Is your son's bookshelf arranged in colour order?
It's arranged by language.
Oh, language. Interesting. All right, well, let's finish up then with some quick fire questions.
Okay.
I'm interested because you've got a big bookshelf there with your son and you're doing a lot of reading. What kind of book or maybe resource or podcast would you recommend that lawyers take a look at if they want to grow in a particular area in leadership or wherever?
As a translator before, I mostly translated books related to food
Mm,
and diet. So a lot of my books on my bookshelf are related to food, well-being, and different kinds of nutrition diets. And that's something I like and care about. But it also helps me reorganize my thoughts because it's nothing related to my job right now. It helps me calm down a bit. So I recommend people to find their hobbies, do something that is not totally related to work, but something that can nourish your soul, help you regather your thoughts, and really rest because resting helps you replenish and helps you do better in the future.
wow, amazing. If you weren't a legal recruiter, what do you think you might be doing instead?
I would probably try to do what I wanted to do as a kid, which is become an architect.
Mm,
I really like building things. I like spatial patterns and things like that. I love building Lego with my son,
Hmm.
and I feel like it helps me ground myself because you're building things one at a time, doing things step by step. As I said earlier, I'm a very detail-oriented planner type of person. So
Hmm.
I really like these details.
That's really great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm just thinking architect. What's something about you that people may be surprised to learn outside of your day job? Now, you just mentioned embroidery.
Yes.
That perked up my ears.
Yeah.
It's very detail orientated. And I think if you're in that, you get right down into it and you ignore or don't even notice other things going on. Would that be one thing? But you might have something else that people don't know about you. Well, tell us a bit more about the embroidery if you'd like to speak about that.
Well, I do enjoy embroidery, and I realize it's something that you can fixate on for quite some time, but it's very bad for your eyes. But it's very fun and a creative outlet where there's certain rules where you have to use stitches, certain patterns to create the bigger picture. But then there's a lot of freedom and autonomy in doing these embroidery. You can create whatever you want. So I really enjoy that.
I love it.
And yeah, I think it's the same as cooking as well. I
Yeah.
like cooking with my son. It's fun to see him try to wield a kid's knife.
Yeah.
It's a little bit scary, but still it's like you're watching them develop, and it's also building things from scratch. You need to follow a certain way of doing things, otherwise the outcome is a bit botched. So yeah, I do enjoy these
Mm.
crafty kind of things.
Yeah, I love them too. I just on the children cooking thing, I follow 3 or 4 kids on Instagram who are obviously helped by their parents. I can hear them in the background and they're videoing, but they're doing all this cooking.
Yeah,
And it's so exciting and fun. And it just brings a smile to my face every
yeah,
time. I'll
it's
have to share a
adorable.
few with you. They're just the ones that I've got, are probably some of the ones that you've got, but just amazing. And the last one is one I didn't share with you before we recorded today, but I have asked a few other guests in the past, and it's brought out some really amazing answers.
Yeah.
If your career was a metaphor, and that could be a jewel, or a sport, or it could be a piece of embroidery, an animal, a food, what would you describe your career as if it was a metaphor?
A metaphor I would use to probably describe my career up to now is various roads leading to the present. All roads lead to Rome kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
situation.
perfect.
There's various ways to achieve things or get to a certain point in your life where you're happy. You know, if one area doesn't work or one road doesn't work, there's always a different path to take. That journey is always rewarding in hindsight. It might be painful in the meantime, but down the road, you'll be able to appreciate all the
Mm.
obstacles you encounter, all the stones you've encountered. You'll get there.
Yeah, you'll get there. The stones, even appreciate the stones you've encountered. That's interesting. Well, Ida, we have reached the end of our conversation today. Thank you so much for joining me on Lawyer on Air. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you and connect in this way. Have you enjoyed yourself?
Yes, very much. Thank you very much, Catherine.
Good. Would you tell someone else who might be invited to come on the show to say yes?
Yes, of course. I was actually hoping to recommend a few people that I was like, has Catherine already
Great.
connected with that person?
Oh, I was going to ask you that once we got offline. Yay, I'm glad to hear that. But before we finish up, where's the best place for people to reach out to you? You talked about telephoning you, but ikinari, getting straight into telephoning you might be a little direct, but is there a way to get hold of you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it on your website? What's the best
Yes,
way?
you can reach me on LinkedIn. My email's on LinkedIn as well as our website. Of course, you can give me a call. I don't mind cold calls, and I also call my candidates and clients out of the blue sometimes.
Gosh, good on you.
Yes.
Well
Yeah,
done.
we're kind of old school on that.
Well, fantastic. I'll put all that information, as much as we've got there, into the show notes so listeners can find you. And
Yes.
to my listeners who are here, if you liked this episode, it inspired you, and it gave you something to think about, I'd love to hear from you. Please let us know. Subscribe, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, or send us even a voice or text review. You can do that via our website. Your feedback really helps more and more listeners just like you find this show and discover the answers to questions they always had and they didn't know where to go to find them. That's all for today. See you back here for the next episode. Cheers, kampai, and bye for now.